Suddenly, you're awake. As you open your eyes, you notice that there isn't any sunlight straining out the sides of your curtains. It's still very much the middle of the night. You try to fall back asleep, but no matter how much you lay still and try to relax, sleep never comes. An idea comes to mind. Maybe if you get out of bed and stay up for a little bit, you'll eventually get tired again and it'll be much easier to fall asleep. You walk downstairs and get a glass of water. No point in just sitting in the dark and staring at the wall though, you might as well turn on the TV. What greets you on screen is a completely different world of television that you're used to seeing during the day. All the familiar talk shows, sitcoms, soap operas, and dramas have all been replaced with other forms of content. Some of it is mundane, some of it is bizarre, and some of it is downright disturbing. You're now stuck in the world of overnight television. If you're above the age of 25 or so, you probably have a memory just like this of either waking up in the middle of the night or just staying up late and turning on the TV at 3 a.m. and seeing a bunch of weird stuff. Maybe it was a strange infomercial or a disturbing public access show, but in any event, whatever you saw probably wasn't the sort of thing that was playing during the day. Unless it was an endless barrage of Seinfeld reruns, that would also happen sometimes too. Overnight television just isn't really much of a thing anymore. Nowadays, if you were to get up in the middle of the night and want to watch something, you would have endless choices with platforms like YouTube and Netflix. But when I was a kid in the early 2000s, not only was television your only real option, but you'd be experiencing it in complete isolation. You couldn't just scroll through Reddit or Twitter on your phone. You were effectively alone in a dark room when confronted with bizarre late-night broadcasts. And having these encounters with this world while being so young has cemented the experience in my mind ever since. Today, I want to do my best to recreate the now lost and forgotten world of overnight TV, and we're going to go over everything. Buckle in guys, because this is going to be a long video. Before the advent of cable television, most TV channels didn't show anything overnight. For a long time, it just wasn't profitable to spend the money to broadcast analog signals over the air if nobody was watching. So pretty much every channel would eventually stop broadcasting at some point in the night, usually at midnight or 1 a.m. Before the giant network transmitters were shut down, however, most channels would play something called a sign-off. Here in Canada, these sign-offs would usually consist of the national anthem accompanied by various patriotic videos and images, often including the Queen and royal family. In the USA, it was basically the same thing, patriotic imagery accompanied by the Star-Spangled Banner. I imagine some of you are feeling creeped out at this and are wondering why. Well, it's because this patriotic sign-off motif has been used in analog horror. Specifically, it was parodied in Local 58's Contingency, which shows a sign-off message saying that America has surrendered to the enemy and to honor liberty by taking the final and greatest liberty of all. As cable began to become more widely adopted, broadcasting at all times of the day became more common, even on channels that were still only sending signals over the air. Instead of signing off now, many networks would instead show automated messages after their normal day of programming was complete. Like Night Owl, for example. This service was used on several stations in the early 1980s to show automated news alerts at all hours of the night, accompanied by Kmart-sounding pop music and Atari 2600-looking visuals. Weather alerts were also included as part of these automated news dashboards, which were often accompanied by loud alarms. Again, you can see where some analog horror projects may have taken inspiration. As time went on and cable began to outpace over-the-air broadcasting in terms of wide adoption in the 1990s and the 2000s, overnight TV began to get more elaborate. Stations realized that there was money to be made by filling out these time slots with real programming. But what do you show if nobody is watching? The fact that these time slots have so few viewers greatly affected what TV channels will show during them. For one thing, the lack of an audience meant that there was little risk to the broadcaster if what was being shown wasn't up to the quality or ethical standards of the station, which led to very experimental and downright bizarre programming. If you had something weird or questionable that you were somehow allowed to show on TV, chances are you would be stuck in the graveyard slot. And no format of television is quite as emblematic of the graveyard slot as the infomercial. When channels began broadcasting 24/7, I think the first idea many of them had was, what if we just show commercials all night? It made sense. There wasn't an audience to disappoint, and it would be the best way to capitalize on what was previously dead airtime. But most companies that pay to advertise on TV aren't going to want to buy ad slots for a time when nobody is watching. This meant that the cost to advertise in the middle of the night was much cheaper than during the day. So much so that it was viable for even the smallest companies to buy entire 30-minute time slots purely for advertising. Now, what sort of companies do you think are going to go buy out 30-minute time slots in the middle of the night when no one is watching? If you haven't had the privilege of watching infomercials in the middle of the night, I'm going to do my best to describe what the experience was like. These programs are usually done in some sort of studio and almost always have a charismatic host that's very good at bullshitting. For 30 minutes, the same few key points about whatever product they're trying to hawk are repeated over and over again. The point of advertising in general is to hammer tiny tidbits of information into your head, and infomercials take this concept to an extreme. It's almost like a fever dream just listening to the same phrases over and over again. What makes it even more surreal is that the products themselves are often just as strange as the advertising method. One of my favorites is Ronco. This company just sells a lot of what I can only describe as Jimmy Neutron's dad's inventions. In one single 5-minute time span in a Ronco infomercial, you will see demonstrations of a fancy toilet plunger.
And I really designed it for the lady of the house. When she uses these, most of the time they don't work. That's why I developed the Ronco Drain Buster.
Look at how attractive that is.
It uses water and air for power.
An inflatable balloon that hangs off the top of your car that's supposed to stop people from denting your doors.
I made this particular product because my wife and my daughter both were denting the heck out of my doors. Patented Ronco door saver. No matter how hard, you can't dent the other person's door.
And a food dehydrator.
So, Ron, why did you invent the Ronco electric food dehydrator, beef jerky machine, yogurt maker?
First of all, I didn't like additives and preservatives in my food, and I happen to love beef jerky.
If you've ever seen the show Tim and Eric Awesome Show Great Job, the fictional company Cinco is a direct parody of Ronco. Cinco skits on Tim and Eric tend to be presented as infomercials revolving around absurd inventions. One of the very first trends seen on infomercials were programs advertising psychic hotlines. As far back as 1991, a company called the Psychic Friends Network were producing infomercials disguised as fake crossing over style shows where actors would interact with so-called mediums, who would of course always have some amazing revelations that you could also get if you call in for the low price of $4 a minute, which is more than $9 in today's money. As ridiculous as this sounds, you have to remember that the 90s were a different time, and belief in the paranormal and weird spirituality in general was more common back then, which is something I talked in length about in my Horrors in the 1990s internet series. As a result, the Psychic Friends Network quickly became one of the most successful series of infomercials in history, right at the inception of the ad format. At its peak, they were raking in $125 million a year, all from gullible people who were being charged to hear lies from so-called mediums on the other end of the phone who were pretending to speak with their dead loved ones and offer bogus and vague predictions about the future. A former employee of the Psychic Friends Network known as Mark Edwards would write a book in 2009 detailing his experiences working for the company, in which he flat out admits that none of it was real. The so-called psychics only needed to possess enough charisma to keep the caller in the line for as long as possible. In one case, Mark had kept one customer on the phone for 2.5 hours, which resulted in a $600 bill from the company. The Psychic Friends Network may have been the most successful infomercial psychic service, but it definitely wasn't the only one. Another prominent figure in this community was Miss Cleo, an actress from Los Angeles who would put on a fake Jamaican accent and, again, speak with actors posing as real customers on the TV who act shocked when Miss Cleo can surmise everything about them and their dead loved ones through her amazing psychic powers.
Yeah, and apparently must have been ligaments through the knee because I'm getting the pain in the actual knee down about to the ankle dot, and that's the only thing that's going to continue to bother him.
Hey, Valerie?
Uh-huh.
On a scale of like 1 to 10, how accurate was everything she just said to you?
10.
Of course, if you actually decide to shell out the $5 a minute for the privilege of calling Miss Cleo, you wouldn't even get to talk to her. You would be passed off to one of her associates who would read from a script. Also, oddly enough, Miss Cleo was the voice of Auntie Poulet in GTA Vice City. You could find basically any semi-scammy product advertised on infomercials, like self-help programs that would promise to make you rich and successful, or a reading course that promises to help you achieve a 3,000 word a minute reading speed, or Greer Childers Body Flex infomercials, which are advertising your exercise tapes. This part in particular shows you how you can improve the toning on your face by doing facial exercises, or in other words, a 90s version of mewing.
It starts with a low O. We'll then accompany it with sticking your tongue out. We will then look up so we can work underneath the eyes. Now I'm going to demonstrate this, and then you'll do it along with me.
Imagine you just woke up in the middle of the night, you turn on your TV, and this is what you see. What exactly would go through your head? This sort of esoteric atmosphere plagued the world of late-night infomercials, likely due to the low cost of the time slots and the little oversight given from the broadcasters. One network, though, would eventually notice the absurdity of the infomercial world and harness it to create unique pieces of art that would air alongside the advertisements that inspired them. Adult Swim. On November 3rd, 2009 at 4 a.m., Adult Swim would quietly air a 10-minute segment called Icelandic Ultra Blue. For all intents and purposes, this comes off like a genuine infomercial, at least for the first couple minutes. The product being advertised here is called Icelandic Ultra Blue, a pill that can improve all aspects of your life. We hear some testimonials from happy customers, and then the host, Dr. Torsten Samuelsson, announces a contest to replace the 63-year-old company jingle with a fresh new song, and that you can enter and possibly have your music as the next Icelandic Ultra Blue theme. We then cut to a couple user-submitted songs, both of which are low-quality acapellas that are believable entries in a jingle contest.
Got some aches, got some pains, when it pours it certainly rains.
The third submission, though, is a professionally produced song and music video.
Icelandic Ultra Blue.
This ends with a credit screen that zooms out right into a scene with Wendy Klitlock, the producer of the song we just heard. He's advertising the Icelandic Ultra Blue air purifier. We get an explanation segment of how the purifier works, which apparently isolates the good air particles from the bad air particles. This transitions into a scene where the good air particles are depicted as Nazis who are throwing the bad air particles into trains and stealing their gold, which brings us into an advertisement for a mom-and-pop Nazi gold for cash store. The wife gets the splinter at the end of the ad, and that transitions into a splinter removal service, which the host of the previous segment apparently takes advantage of, but it's not enough and she dies of her splinter wound. Dr. Samuelsson then walks back in to talk about Icelandic Ultra Blue Embalm Balm, an embalming fluid that can preserve a human body for up to 3 months. The doctor then announces the winner of the theme song contest while the Nazi Cash for Gold husband is doing something under the blanket with his dead wife. We get a performance of the new piano ballad Icelandic Ultra Blue theme song, which gets interrupted by electric drums that are apparently unwanted accompaniment, which prompts a brief argument between the singer and the DJ, and that turns into an advertisement for a Jersey Shore nightclub. We see some happy patrons, but one of them has a really bad rash on their chest. Luckily, Icelandic Ultra stuff can help. It's the most intense skin healing known to man. You can get it as part of the Icelandic Ultra Party Pack, which is a package that contains all 4 of the Icelandic Ultra Blue products shown in this infomercial. And we finally end off with an ominous message from Dr. Samuelsson.
You will buy these products. Phase 1 is complete.
The format of Icelandic Ultra Blue is pretty simple and clever. Each transition between scenes makes sense when you consider them individually, but when they're all grouped together, it makes for an infomercial that's going off the rails every couple of minutes. But as surreal as it is, it's surprisingly not terribly different from the real advertisements it's parodying. If you compare the Icelandic Ultra Blue's line of products to Ronco's, for example, is it even really that much weirder? Ronco shoves in your face a super toilet plunger, an inflatable car door protector, and a food dehydrator all in the span of a few minutes. Sure, the format is intentionally more bizarre, but the actual products being advertised are almost on par with each other in terms of strangeness. The idea behind this project was to sneak in a fake infomercial onto a TV channel alongside the real ones that were airing to give unsuspecting viewers a greatly enhanced version of the esoteric overnight television experience. And although Icelandic Ultra Blue wasn't very successful on release, the 4 a.m. time slot was so cheap that Adult Swim would continue ordering more specials throughout the years. Some of these would actually be advertising real products, like this infomercial for Aziz Ansari's comedy special. but the majority of them were just experimental films based off of the fake infomercial concept. And as time went on, they would slowly begin to creep into the realm of horror, starting off with 2013's Live Forever As You Are Now with Alan Resnick. Airing originally at 4 a.m. on Christmas Eve, Live Forever As You Are Now starts off by introducing us to the next big tech visionary, Alan Resnick, who is about to share with us a revolutionary new product. Before telling us just what it is he's advertising, Alan tells us how he came up with the idea for this product in the first place. After having a fight with his wife one night, Alan had a dream about walking through a forest and finding a beautiful nude woman sitting by a body of water. She beckons him towards her, and despite his love for his wife, he pursues her anyways. Before he can get to her though, a man in the fog shoots him, completely destroying his face. Alan wakes up and immediately has a great new product idea, a piece of software that can back up a human personality so someone's likeness can be preserved even after they die. In only 2 months, he creates a prototype and tests it out by backing up his own personality, which he shows to the audience. The backed up version of Alan appears as an uncanny rough computer animation of his face that can communicate via a text-to-speech program. For whatever reason, the computer version of Alan refers to itself as Teddy.
He's exactly like me in every way. He calls himself Teddy. I don't know why. My name is Alan.
Hello, my name is Teddy. I was created to be an exact digital backup of Alan Resnick.
Alan then describes the strange process one needs to go through to digitize themselves, which includes steps like staring at yourself in the mirror for 5 hours and then sketching your face from memory in complete darkness on a piece of paper. As Alan is explaining this process, Teddy keeps interrupting by saying,
To remind you of what you did in the bathroom.
I love my wife. She is nice.
Alan continues explaining the process that eventually ends up with a somewhat realistic 3D version of your face on the computer, stating that it captures even your smallest imperfections.
I am sorry, Alan. I didn't understand what you just said.
I said it's our imperfections.
Imperfection. To not be perfect. Defect. Flaw. Deformation. Ha 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 ha.
He then immediately transitions into an explanation about the uncanny valley, asking the audience if they've ever been disgusted after their girlfriend covers up her beautiful natural skin with disgusting makeup. Don't fret if this has happened to you, says Alan. This can all be explained with science. He then shows us a chart displaying the uncanny valley and gives us an example to explain the concept. One day, Alan was running through a forest and accidentally tripped over a rock, an ugly rock, that happens to sit at the very beginning of the uncanny valley chart, a very obviously non-human object. He then draws a pair of eyes onto it to anthropomorphize it a little, which increases his sense of empathy with the object. As he's explaining, Teddy keeps interrupting.
And then it becomes creepy. Blech.
I love my beautiful wife.
Alan says that the rock is looking kinda cute now, so he continues and draws a nose and lips to make it even more cute. Then he grafts some human skin onto it, and it's suddenly not so cute anymore. It's tumbled into the bottom of the uncanny valley, supposedly like your hypothetical girlfriend and her makeup. But when Alan is explaining this, Teddy offers a very brief but very important piece of exposition.
Your rock fell down into the uncanny valley. It's down here with moving corpses, and this is where your girlfriend lives, and we're gonna try to...
Did you catch it? Let me play it again.
And this is where your girlfriend lives, and we're gonna try to...
As Alan says that your girlfriend is living at the bottom of the uncanny valley, Teddy corrects him and says, wife. Meaning that Alan is likely not talking about some hypothetical girlfriend that looks like a fake human with uncanny makeup. He's likely talking about his own wife. Remember, Teddy is supposed to be a replica of Alan, one that the audience has been led to believe has his memories and personality, but maybe not the same sense of inhibition that a real human would have. Alan keeps listing strange details of how he developed his product, like the various skin stress tests he's put his digital likenesses through before they're considered ready for the end customer. But as he keeps talking, Teddy keeps interrupting.
When you're trying to chat about your dad.
Do I get to see my wife?
Don't. So that's it, we've created a...
In fact, no matter what Alan says, whenever Teddy is prompted, he only has one thing he wants to talk about.
Hey Teddy, when I do pasta, do I do spinny or bow tie?
My wife has hair.
We get some testimonials from happy customers who have all replaced their dead loved ones with uncanny digital duplicates. These are pretty surreal comedic segments, but the thing to keep note of here are the things the avatars are saying. For the most part, they appear to be just repeating out of context phrases that the real human versions of these personas may have said while they were alive. Like,
The room is cold.
Oh, hello, Trish.
This room is too cold. I love to watch TV. Does this car get good gas mileage? Are we watching Murphy Brown? Roll down the windows, please.
we almost have enough information to figure out the underlying story behind this infomercial, but we'll need the ending to tie it all together.
This is my wife.
Teddy shows everybody that he's replicated what he perceives to be his wife, a floating ball of skin. He gives her several compliments, saying that she's nice, pretty, and his best friend. If we consider Teddy to be both an honest representation of Alan's inner thoughts, as well as just repeating out-of-context things Resnick may have said in the past, we can put together a story that might explain what happened to Alan's wife. All throughout this special, Resnick continually talks about skin. Whether it's the skin stress test he does, his intense devotion to creating perfect and believable digital flesh, putting human skin on a rock, getting shot and having his facial skin messed up, how he got an internship at the morgue just so he could personally study human skin, or his wife covering up her natural luminous skin by putting on disgusting makeup.
Have you ever gone over to your girlfriend's house and she's covered her face in disgusting makeup, and you find out that all of a sudden you don't love her anymore?
This special starts with Alan explaining that he thought of this product after having an intense fight with his wife, and the only point of contention alluded to in the story is when he says his wife looked like a moving corpse when she covered up her naturally beautiful skin. Alan then dreams about being shot in the face in the woods, and then he talks about tripping over a rock, also in the forest, at which point he grafts human skin onto it. My interpretation of this story is that Alan had an argument with his wife about her skin, shot her in the face in the woods, and then grafted her skin onto a rock. He then spent the next 2 months creating a digital persona of himself called Teddy, who repeats many of the guilty things Alan no doubt was saying during the training process while dealing with the horrible thing he had done. While presenting his creation to the audience, Alan is able to somewhat hold back his disturbing thoughts and feelings, but Teddy serves as an honest representation of Alan's inner dialogue, and ends the special by showing us his ideal wife, a mass of perfect floating skin, and nothing else. There's no real definitive conclusion you can draw here. You can only really connect the dots and try your best to come up with your own explanation that takes all the little details into account. And that's a clear marker of any project created by Alan Resnick, who is merely playing a twisted fictional version of himself in this special. You may know Resnick from the YouTube ARG Alan tutorial, which was one of his earliest projects and, in my mind, is one of the greatest ever internet ARGs. Alan will go on to create several other infomercial projects for Adult Swim, but we'll get to those in a minute. When Live Forever As You Are Now aired, the infomercial series was a still relatively unknown Adult Swim project that was still resulting in many confused viewers asking what they had just watched on message boards each time a new special aired at 4 a.m. But that would all change in 2014, when a particular infomercial special will blow up so hard, it arguably remains today as the single most popular piece of media ever created by Adult Swim. Too Many Cooks. I'm not gonna sit here and explain this one because you've likely seen it before. Too Many Cooks isn't even an infomercial. It's a parody of those old sitcom intros that would introduce an absurdly large roster of characters. But Too Many Cooks never ends. It just keeps introducing new characters until a villain shows up and starts killing off everyone. Too Many Cooks was the first Adult Swim infomercial project that truly outgrew its original status as a weird thing that was only shown on TV in the middle of the night. It would immediately go viral on YouTube, currently sitting at 27 million views. To put in perspective how important of a piece of media this is, Too Many Cooks is the only YouTube video to have a custom font on the YouTube player page. Success is great and everything, but Too Many Cooks would create some problems for the infomercial series. The whole idea behind these specials was to create convincing fake TV segments that fit alongside the just as weird real content that was being shown on every other channel in the middle of the night. But the only way this works is if the viewer doesn't know what they're watching. Too Many Cooks widely publicized this idea, and people began to stay up late in anticipation of catching a new experimental overnight TV film made by Adult Swim, which kind of nullifies the concept a little. As a result, the production teams making these infomercials began to get more and more creative with their formats. Like in Frank Pierre Presents Pure Resort and Casino, this special is supposed to mimic that channel that every hotel TV is tuned to when you first turn it on. You know, with the menu that shows you pay-per-view movies and the different features of the hotel and whatnot. This one is hosted by Ray Wise, and as the program goes on, things just keep getting stranger and more horrifying, much like every other Adult Swim special.
Get out.
What's that, Susan?
Well, Frank, it's a video-on-demand system that delivers the latest movies from the cinema to your hotel TV.
2016's unedited footage of a bear would be the first special to really mark the transition of the infomercial format to the internet, which was the primary way these videos were being watched anyways. I mean, how many people who had cable were staying up until 4 AM to watch these live? Unedited footage of a bear is presented as a YouTube ad, and as such, we're not really going to talk about it here because it doesn't fit in with the theme of overnight television, despite being simultaneously launched on the internet and TV. No, the last Adult Swim special we're going to talk about in this video is another project by Alan Resnick, which is undoubtedly the single greatest piece of media to ever debut in the middle of the night. You're at a hotel, and no matter how hard you try, you just can't seem to fall asleep. Maybe the mattress is uncomfortable, or you're too used to your bed at home, but regardless, sleep remains out of reach no matter how hard you try. You decide to turn on the TV and surf through some channels. Maybe if you distract yourself a bit, you'll eventually feel tired. You flick past reruns, bizarre public access shows, strange infomercials, but then you come across something that catches you off guard. What's staring at you from the screen is what appears to be a feed of surveillance cameras showing you the inside of a family home. These aren't polished, professionally filmed scenes merely meant to look like surveillance camera feeds. The audio here is thin and hard to hear, the visuals are blown out and compressed, and just look cheap overall. There's nothing other than the fact that you're watching cable TV to let you know that what you're looking at isn't real. Maybe there's something wrong with the hotel's cable box, and someone's actual home security camera network somehow got mixed in with real TV channels. The feed changes to a different angle of the same house every so often. We start off by spying on a couple and their baby talking about vacation plans in the kitchen, but when the angle changes, we can see what appears to be a body laying face down on the floor that the couple seems to be completely ignoring, as if it wasn't there. We cut to a man doing some kind of home rental work in the basement, and then to the living room, where we can see an old lady, presumably the grandmother, watching TV. Also in the living room is a dressed up young boy that appears to be preparing for a birthday party of some kind. The couple keeps discussing things in the kitchen, but you slowly notice that nothing they're saying makes any sense. The man is asking why they're putting heavy metals and newspapers in the backyard where their tomato plants are.
The newspaper that's going in the backyard, that's where the tomato plants go in the summertime.
Why do you think the tomatoes are so big in the summer?
You'll quickly notice a theme here of nonsense talk between this couple, but we'll discuss that more in a little bit. The only time they seem to snap back to reality and have discussions that make sense, though, are when they're talking about their daughter.
She left me sitting in the car for an hour, Tom. An hour. We got her that cell phone so that she could call us. She has her cell phone, but she's not calling us.
She's a kid. She's hanging out with her friends. They're doing lots of stuff. They're finding all the nooks and crannies in the world.
That's fine. Just let me know about it then.
We then learn that the body on the floor is the daughter they've been arguing about, and that she's been on the ground like this for 2 hours. The couple continues arguing, with the mother wanting more control and oversight about what the daughter is doing, and the father wanting to give their child more freedom. The mother starts taunting her daughter, who we learn is named Madison, by taking pictures of her on the floor and presumably sending them to other people.
You think you're being so cute, huh? I'm gonna show everyone how cute you are.
This is just another.
We cut to the little boy in the living room who seems to be anxiously fidgeting with whatever he can, and then back to the couple who just keep taunting and having one-sided arguments with Madison. Then we get introduced to a new character, a baby, who appears to be making some sort of mound of Play-Doh or something on their high chair, which we can see is a clear replica of whatever the man on the TV is making, who is played by Alan Resnick. The little boy relaxes on the couch, and we catch a view of a deer outside the window, and then some other unknown creature passes by. The father appears to be making light of the situation by trying to dance with his obviously pissed off wife. The little boy continues nervously moving around objects around the party table while Alan Resnick talks nonsense on the TV. The father eventually has enough and tries to pick up his daughter by the shoulders, but discovers something disturbing. Not only is Madison completely non-responsive, but she appears to be stuck to the floor. No matter how hard he tries, he can't lift her up. This seems to break the couple out of whatever haze they were previously in, and they frantically begin trying to get their daughter off of the ground. Nothing seems to work though, and they start to panic. Nobody else in the house seems to be fazed by this, except for the baby who begins crying. The boy looks out the window, noticing that his party guests are arriving, all while his parents are screaming and trying to get Madison off of the ground. He walks into the kitchen to let his parents know that the guests are outside, and the mom says that no matter what, they cannot come into the house. The father apologizes to his son, who we learn is named Jackson, who then walks away disappointed. As the couple are still freaking out, they notice that Madison is not only stuck, but she's actually somehow clipping into the floor. This prompts even more panic from the couple, all while Jackson is sadly turning away his party guests. The man in the basement finally notices something really messed up is happening above him and runs upstairs, as we get a view of Madison's face slowly peeking past the floorboards. The party guests outside all seem to be confused as to what the strange noises are, and that's when the contractor in the basement gets upstairs and is obviously stunned to see what's happening. This prompts an awkward moment of silence between everyone in the kitchen.
Oh my god.
Help! Help us! Come on! Help!
More confused guests appear outside while a sad Jackson sulks by the door, who then goes and starts packing up all the party favors into a paper bag. The wife and the workmen head to the basement to see if they can push Maddie back into the kitchen using a 2x4, while the father frantically tries to soothe his baby, and eventually gives it to their grandmother, who then puts it on the ground and continues watching her show while it crawls away on their own. Jackson starts stuffing the party favors in the bag behind his bed, while the mother and father wait anxiously in the basement to catch Maddie when she eventually completely clips through the floor, all while the father keeps repeating, "It's a test." Seemingly bored, the party guests outside begin opening Jackson's gifts and playing with them, and the workman starts trying to cut Maddie out of the floor in the kitchen while the father goes more and more off the rails in the basement, telling his wife that he praises and serves her, and that they're a family no matter what. The house starts to fill with smoke and dust from the contractor cutting through the floor, but the grandmother doesn't seem to notice and just keeps watching TV. The children outside just keep making more and more of a mess on the front lawn with garbage and toys. The smoke alarms start going off as Madison almost appears to be completely through the floor, at which point the mother runs upstairs and takes Jackson's mattress to the basement, presumably to break her daughter's fall, all while the father is pacing back and forth and talking to himself. The baby is spotted crawling outside the house, and Maddie eventually falls onto the mattress, but the camera's visual feed goes down and we can only hear screaming. We get a glimpse of the basement for just a second where we can see an empty mattress, and then it cuts to the outside view where we can see several people laying face down much like Maddie. This is where the entire feed cuts out and the credits come up. But on that credit screen, there's a link to a website called absurveillancesolutions.com. This is a dead link now, but if you were to visit it back in 2016, you would have been greeted with a pretty outdated looking website for a surveillance company. You might notice a login form at the top of this page, and a forget password link underneath it. Clicking this fills out a blank email on your default mail client, which will apparently be sent to noreply@absurveillancesolutions.com. If you sent this message back in 2016, you would receive an automated email back with login info. Using the provided username and password locks you into some sort of terminal interface, the same one that appears at the beginning of this strange television special. Internet sleuths quickly worked their magic and discovered a lot of Easter eggs hidden on this site, and I'm not kidding when I say a lot. This infomercial may have been under 12 minutes long, but its associated website held almost 2 hours of hidden videos and audio, and that's not even mentioning all the extra text files and images. While I would love to go over all of these here, this video is not about internet ARGs, it's about the strange things you can see on overnight television. If you want to see a more complete analysis of this project, I recommend watching 9mind's video about it, which is an hour and 40 minutes long. We're going to analyze this more or less exclusively from what's been shown to us on the TV, because despite all the extra content, this was still designed to be consumed as a standalone piece. And to start things off, we need to talk about the title of this project, which I still haven't told you. This house has people in it. Think about what that title might imply. What's the difference between a house and a home? Home is where the heart is, but a house is not a home. And this house has people in it. Not a family, but people. One thing that's apparent when watching this special is a disconnect between all the characters. The only people who ever really collaborate in any way are the wife and husband, and then only briefly the wife and repairman. Everyone else is existing in their own bubble and not interacting with each other at all. Even when the wife and husband are talking to each other, it's only in nonsense exchanges and arguments. It's only when Madison begins going through a very real crisis that implies some sort of danger to herself when they finally snap out of it and focus on reality to try to help their daughter. But as they realize they basically have no power over the situation, the dad once again detaches from reality and starts spewing out nonsense, as well as further entrenching himself in denial by ranting about how they're a strong family. At one point, he unknowingly blocks the repairman and the mom from sliding the mattress under his daughter who's about to fall through the floor, all as he's talking to himself about how they're such a great family that can get through anything.
Little engine, a double-crushing engine that let us build up the power and the strength and the will and the love to shatter the chains around.
I think at its core, This House Has People in It is about a broken family and neglected children. Each son and daughter is neglected in their own unique way. Madison's problems are not respected or even noticed, as we can see at the beginning of this special when her parents are just having a normal conversation while she lays motionless face down on the floor. Even worse, her mother uses humiliation and embarrassment as a method of control over her. It's only when real danger smacks them in the face that her parents take her seriously, which is a real-life parallel to the other desperate methods neglected children use to get their parents to take them seriously. Jackson, on the other hand, has a whole other host of problems. One thing you'll notice in the special is that his mattress doesn't have any sheets on it and appears to be dirty, and when the mom takes it to the basement, we can notice a bunch of garbage under it. And speaking of that action in particular, I think there's a general theme here of Jackson being neglected in favor of his older sibling. The whole house was preparing for what was very obviously his birthday party, an event that he seemed very excited for, judging on how precise he was with putting every item in the right place on the table. But when Madison has a crisis that requires her parents' full attention, he has to tell the guests to leave, and he just sort of sulks around after, with nobody really noticing that he exists. And I don't think it's a coincidence that his mom chose to toss his bare dirty mattress in particular down the stairs to save his sister, in a house that presumably contains 4 or 5 beds. And then we get to the baby, who does get a little bit of love at the beginning of the special, but again, by the end of it, it's on its own crawling outside in the yard with no one even noticing that it's missing. Almost everything in the special points to how the bad behavior of adults trickles down and affects their kids. One of the first lines from the father is about how they should use the money they saved up for a family vacation to Orlando, which was presumably going to be a child-focused trip, to instead go to Cape Town in South Africa. And I think worst of all is the grandmother, who essentially ignores everything that's going on around her. Even when chaos is erupting in the house because of a real danger to her granddaughter, she just sits there watching TV. When she's handed her baby grandchild to look after in this crisis, she appears disgusted and just puts it on the ground so she can watch her TV in peace. The only consistent thing in This House Has People in It is a dysfunction between characters, and like we said before, the title basically sums it up. It's not a home, it's a house. It's not a family, it's just people. But what about that creature that passed in front of the window, and why are all the party guests lying on the ground at the end? Well, those parts can only really be explained by the online bonus material, which doesn't really paint a more complete picture, it just adds many different unrelated plot lines to this story. That's kinda Alan Resnick's style, and if you want to get the whole story, go check out Nightmind's video. And by the way, that little hotel intro thing that we did, that was based on a Reddit comment from Alan Resnick, who said that he imagined the viewer being in a hotel room and not being able to sleep, and just flicking through the channels until they eventually happen upon a feed of security cameras. This House Has People in It is a masterclass in experimental horror. It manages to use a non-conventional format with great horror to express very real and grounded concepts. It's the sort of film where you can analyze every frame and find something you can assign some sort of meaning to, and it's undoubtedly the greatest work in the Infomercial series. But it's not an infomercial, is it? The problem with the Infomercial series is that it very quickly outgrew its original concept of parodying bizarre late-night advertisements, which makes sense. There's only so much content you can make around a narrow idea like that. But many of these specials did take influence from another pretty iconic section of overnight TV, one that we haven't yet discussed: public access. As TV networks began to become larger and more syndicated in the 1970s, the FCC in the United States introduced a new mandate to force broadcasters to maintain locally made content in every market they entered. Networks would need to set aside budget and airtime to provide channels for educational purposes, government purposes, and most importantly for our story, public access. This would be a way for non-professional creative people to be able to produce and broadcast their own low-budget TV programs. The barrier to entry for making your own public access program is surprisingly low, with networks being mandated by law to provide budding TV producers with the equipment and airtime to make their dreams possible. This has resulted in a lot of great media figures and franchises getting their start on public access, like Tom Green for example. In my hometown of Ottawa, Tom got his first taste of TV production on the Canadian equivalent of public access, pioneering a lot of popular internet content formats in the process, like wacky man-on-the-street interviews or cringy prank videos.
Ask you where you're going? Answer my question. Where the hell are you going? Answer my question. Where are you going? Hey?
Mystery Science Theater 3000 also got their start on public access and used it to quickly etch a deal with the Comedy Channel to become a nationally broadcasted TV show. Alex Jones also began his media career on public access, and honestly, I feel like he fits in much better on a wacky, low-budget, low-stakes public access show than being a person with any real influence.
Police can have laser or infrared beams, if you want to call it, and they can project those into your house.
Yeah, the Austin Police Department's, last time I heard, has 20 units with infrared. If you have enough of a heat source in your house, it'll pick up the heat source.
And it's with Alex Jones in particular where we start to approach the more risque parts of public access TV. You see, broadcasters providing airtime for public access is mandated by law. They have to fill a certain amount of time slots whether they like it or not. A lot of times, networks will push their public access airtimes to the middle of the night so they can keep their primetime air slots open for more lucrative content. As we know, stuff that airs in the middle of the night is considered low stakes by broadcasters and thus has less oversight. And public access in particular has no oversight, as part of the reason it was even written into law in the first place was so it could be a true expression of free speech. So what we're dealing with is a format of low-budget television that almost anyone can produce that has no oversight from the networks that are airing it, showing on TV at a time when almost no one is watching. As you can guess, overnight public access TV is probably the strangest television you'll ever see. This world varies from the bizarre, to the disturbing, to the risque, and to the immoral. There's a lot to cover here, but it's worth mentioning that what we're going to discuss today is only a small subsection of public access TV. A lot of these shows aired on local networks 40 or 50 years ago, and many have been completely lost to time. All we have on the internet now is a small selection of them. Remember how I said Tom Green pioneered some formats that would go on to be popular on the internet many years later? In a lot of ways, I think public access television was the closest thing to YouTube that existed pre-internet. YouTube's motto was broadcast yourself, and that's what public access TV allowed you to do since the 1970s. And as a result, you can find many formats of content on public access that would eventually become commonplace on YouTube. Like, for example, horror shitposting. This is a genre of content we've covered extensively on this channel. Whether it's Contran, Obey the Wallers, The Russian Death Files, or the many disturbing unwatched videos, horror shitposting was a staple horror format of early YouTube. Even today, the genre still persists somewhat, with YouTubers like User9472 modernizing the concept of short, nonsensical horror clips that are disturbing purely through their absurdity. But on public access TV, this concept was being done 28 years before YouTube even launched. In 1987, on Ohio Public Access, viewers who had stayed up late enough would be treated to something they had never seen before. A fever dream of horror movie segments that cut and repeat wildly, interspliced with nonsense commentary from a puppet known as the Doctor. This is Asylum for Shut-ins, video psychotherapy.
This is the Asylum for Shut-ins. Follow me into darkness.
While YouTube nowadays is very adverse to any sort of blood or violence being shown on screen, public access TV in the 80s had no such restrictions, and Asylum for Shut-in's horror shitposting style involves what can only be described as ultra-violent gore, jump cutting and repeating in the same manner horror shitpost videos on YouTube would 30 years later. Now again, I want you to return to that same old scenario. Imagine it's 1987 and you're just flicking through the channels in the middle of the night, and you come across Asylum for Shut-ins. What would go through your mind?
A very powerful drug or liquor or any of the other wonderful things you can get hooked on. You love television, but why? You love the horrible, but why?
The commentary from the Doctor is a total contrast from the bloody and disturbing visuals. He speaks in this ridiculous Kermit the Frog voice. Nothing he says really has any substance, and he just kind of jokes around while people are being tortured and killed in between his quips. It's truly a surreal experience.
I can't believe you're watching this show. Don't you have anything better to do?
A program that was even more surreal than Asylum for Shut-ins was Voidoid, which aired on Texas Public Access in 1999. This one has a similar shitposty atmosphere, but with a lot more editing and creative visuals. It's a little hard to describe what's going on in Voidoid. I think it's probably best described as a sort of drug trip without any sort of plot. Again, I implore you to imagine that you just happen upon this show while channel surfing one night. And even more crazy than both of those, at least in some ways, is What's Your Problem? These skits were part of a now lost unnamed public access show that aired in New York in 1985. The show consists of a man trying to put his fork into a dead fish, but every time he tries to do so, a mysterious force seems to yank it away. Every couple of seconds, a voice blares out either, "What's wrong with you?" or "What's your problem?" which prompts the man on screen to get defensive.
I'm trying to eat a fish. What's wrong with you? Trying to eat a fish and it falls off the plate. Would you shut up? What's wrong with you? You're bothering me more than a fish is bothering me. Would you shut up and leave me alone?
This process repeats for 3 minutes until the program moves on to the next scene, which is a different man fidgeting with some weird Freddy Got Finger contraption of pulleys and hanging arrows. This time the voice coming from off screen is making nonsense, vaguely accusative statements towards our host, which prompts hesitant agreement from him every time. Again, this repeats for about 3 minutes.
The greatest remedy for anger is delay. Well, yeah. If you keep a green branch in your heart, the singing bird will come. Well, yeah.
There's a few other sketches here that all more or less follow this format. A person on screen will be doing something absurd while being commented on by a voice off screen, which prompts the same reaction every time for the person on screen. I'm not too sure what point this is trying to make, if any at all. It could just be weird for the sake of being weird, like many other programs on public access. This sort of loosely structured experimental programming is typical of public access. It was rare for these shows to follow the set formats that you would see on professional TV. Instead, people just kinda did whatever they wanted. Like Dance-O-Dance. This 1997 show from Washington State only had one goal: show the audience a live dance party accompanied by some rockin' tunes. That's all it is. Dance-O-Dance is an hour of live dancing, sometimes with a large group of people, sometimes with just a couple, and even sometimes with just a solo dancer. The goal of this program was to celebrate the art form of dance, ranging from regular people letting their yayas out on the dance floor to professionally trained dancers doing routines. Now you might be wondering where the horror is in Dance-O-Dance, and to answer that question, it's in the intro, which is a compilation of many different dance forms, but interspliced in this montage are a few scenes that appear out of place. Among the clips of traditional dances and people jiving just for the fun of it are these creepy segments that don't really appear dance related, like this woman walking on stilts in the middle of a field and what looks like a half-buried corpse. These are completely different tonally from everything else in the montage, and the contrast between the happy dancers and these strange little scenes definitely catches you off guard. But while the people who originally saw Dance-O-Dance all the way back in the 90s on public access may not have had any idea of what was happening, it doesn't actually take very long to get to the bottom of this little mystery on the internet. You see, Justin Wright, the creator of Dance-O-Dance, is not just into dancing purely for the fun of it. He's a student of a form of avant-garde dance we've talked about before on this channel, Buto, which originally arose in the mid-20th century in Japan. Buto usually involves dancers doused in white body paint making slow deliberate movements to create disturbing and surreal scenes. In my mind, it's kind of like the closest thing you're gonna get to horror as a dance form. I think my favorite Buto piece I've come across is Body on the Edge of Crisis, which features some of Japan's most acclaimed Buto dancers and is just really beautifully filmed. If Buto seems interesting to you, I definitely recommend checking that out. Justin Wright was merely including some of his Buto clips in the intro of Dance-O-Dance, and if you look through the rest of his YouTube channel, you can find many videos of his and his friends' full Buto dance routines, a lot of which I can't actually show you here because of how explicit they are. The public access shows we've discussed so far can be described as wacky or eccentric, but not really bad, right? Dance-O-Dance in particular, I would say is quite positive. It's about having fun. But as with any platform that allows people to broadcast almost anything they want to others with no oversight, there is a darker side to public access TV. In 1991 in Arizona, a public access show would air for a very brief run on Tucson's Channel 49. The program was a loosely structured call-in show where audience members could ring Satan himself and be berated by him. The show is extremely crass, even for today's standards, with Nazi imagery being heavily featured and crude sexual acts being performed throughout the runtime. I'm not kidding about that latter part either. At one point, one of the hosts starts pleasuring himself, and we get a beautiful close-up of it that I'm obviously not going to show you. And at another point, a scantily clad woman is brought on the show and continually has her intimate regions fondled by her boyfriend. It's just extremely degenerate and not at all pleasant to watch. It's not surprising to learn that this program only lasted 2 episodes before being cancelled, but what may surprise you is the reason why. It wasn't just because of the blasphemous, explicit, and crass nature of the show. No, it was because the girl they brought on to be manhandled was a minor. The host Lou Perfidio would be charged for this along with an assortment of other sex and obscenity related crimes, but would somehow only end up serving 2 years probation. Even darker than the great Satan at large is this next program, Race and Reason, which was created by infamous neo-Nazi and Klansman Tom Metzger. To say Tom is a bad person is an understatement. He spent his life advocating for hatred and violence wherever he went, even here in Canada, where he illegally crossed the border to try to stir up racial tensions in Toronto. By the way, he spent years with other Klansmen patrolling the US-Mexican border trying to catch people entering illegally, but I guess when he did it, it was fine. Tom's belief system spouts out pretty much every sort of hateful thing you would expect from a self-described neo-Nazi. So it makes you wonder, how exactly does someone like him get his own TV show? In 1984, Metzger would air the first episode of his show, Race and Reason. The content of this program is about what you would expect from a TV show produced by the KKK. Along with interviews and debates, the hosts would go off on racist tangents and give obscene speeches purely for the shock value. In this article from Corpus Christi in 1995, we learn that one of the hosts on the show painted his face black, put on a wig, and blasted a honeydew melon with a shotgun, while calling out a Jewish architect who was a vocal opponent of the program. You may have noticed something in that last paragraph. I said that the show started in 1984, but that story was from 1995. That's because this show somehow ran for more than a decade and was syndicated in 62 cities and 21 states. In an article from 1992 that tries to explain how a show like this was able to stay on the air, it states that by law, broadcasters can't actually control the content of public access TV unless the program is either trying to make money or they're violating some obscenity law. Despite Race and Reason openly using racial slurs, including the N-word on their program, the only time they actually got into trouble was when they had shown some pages from a Playboy magazine on air. A naked woman is too crass, but calling for the deaths of several people groups is completely fine. Race and Reason would begin going through the long process of getting pulled off every TV station they were syndicated on starting in 1995, when courts ruled that free speech on public access doesn't cover inciting hatred against other people. Alright, we're about to move on to the last and possibly strangest piece of media we're going to cover today, and luckily it's not a hateful one. I know that's a pretty high bar to set considering the last few topics we just went over, but trust me, this one is almost beyond explanation. Just like many other shows we've talked about today, Unwind with the Sweeties would make its debut in 1991, this time in Los Angeles. The show almost entirely consists of the 2 hosts named Emma and Gus interacting with each other on this strange set. They're both wearing colored balaclavas with novelty eyeglasses and wigs. Your first impression of this show visually might indicate that this is some sort of kid show, but trust me, it's really not. Unwind with the Sweeties often gets unusually sexually suggestive, like this episode that has Gus looking at a Peep Show magazine and then imagining Emma acting suggestively on a bed of pillows and talking nonsense.
You can't always keep track of time, can she?
Speaking of nonsense, that's pretty much how you can sum up this show. If you've seen Tim and Eric, you probably know that some of their sketches just sometimes kind of devolve into surreal madness when they're nearing their end. Unwind with the Sweeties is like that, but all the time. I'm fairly certain everything is improvised here, and a lot of times there's not even dialogue happening, and the hosts are just kind of making noises, playing with toys, and acting weird.
Don't got care. Boom.
Unwind with the Sweeties would run for 11 years, eventually going off the air in 2002. But that's not where their story ended. They not only have social media accounts currently on most platforms, but they also used to keep a blog detailing their supposed real-life activities. Most of these entries are really strange, like this one that details how Emma cleans Gus's dentures. At the end of this entry, for whatever reason, she posts a picture of a real dead body, saying that this is how Gus looked when she found him. Imagine, Emma had to go on the internet, search for a picture of a dead body, download it, and then post it on this blog to make some sort of joke that doesn't even really make any sense. Even stranger is this post from a month later, detailing a trip they went on, where Emma talks about how Gus was attacked by an eagle. The picture she uses to describe how her husband looked after this happened is a real photo of an extremely mutilated corpse. I honestly have no words. Public access TV still exists today, but not really in the same state it used to. Not because the ability to broadcast yourself on television is diminished in any way, but rather that it's just so much more convenient to make content for the internet, which gives you access to both a vastly wider audience and the ability to profit off of your content. I think YouTube was the first time the promise of public access was truly fulfilled. Amateur content not overseen by executives and shaped by big money. Well, with the exception of a couple channels now, of course. The legacy of public access can be seen throughout YouTube as well. I can name quite a few channels that would have been right at home on a public network in the last century, like Brutal Moose reviewing frozen food or Bringus Studios running computer games on any device that has a computer chip. The FCC 50 years ago wanted to write into law the ability for the masses to make their own entertainment, and that dream has only really come true in the last few years, with YouTube now standing as the world's largest entertainment platform. Part of the reason why it's so interesting to look at public access is because they're staring directly into the past of the low-budget casual entertainment you're so used to watching today on YouTube. And that's going to conclude our peek into the lost world of overnight TV. I am thankful that my memories of experiencing this strange and forgotten realm of media was a little more mundane than a lot of the stuff we covered today, and I hope that I was able to give you all a taste of what that experience was like. This was definitely the sort of video that probably would have been multiple parts originally, but I just decided to do it all in one go. If you like longer videos like this, let me know because I'll make more of them in the future. As always guys, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I really do appreciate your support. And I hope you all have a good Sorry for the interruption guys, but there is something kind of important we gotta talk about. There's a pretty good chance that while you're watching this video, this channel will have hit 200,000 subscribers. I didn't want to make this like a 200,000 subscriber special or anything because I'm pretty sure by the time I upload this video, we'll still be like a little bit under 200,000 subs, but probably in the first few days of this video being up, this channel will have hit that milestone. So consider this the 200,000 sub announcement thing. I don't know what this is. You know, the first year I was doing this channel, we got around 2,000 subs. And every video I put up in that first year, even though you might see that some of them have a lot of views now, in that first year, they mostly had 1,000 views or less. I did have one video that got like 100,000 views, but everything else is pretty much 1,000 views or less. Then the backroom stuff kind of blew up, and that's kind of what got my channel gaining momentum. And around the end of the second year of this channel, we got to 100,000 subscribers. And only 4 months later, we're at 200,000 subscribers. Guys, I just thank you. Like I honestly can't believe it. It's pretty surreal. I still feel like every time I put up a new video that like I just get that feeling like, what if nobody watches it? Every single time I put up a video, I'm still thinking like, what if nobody watches? What if this one gets like 20 views? I have a distinct memory of putting up the Far Future Iceberg Explain video. And I remember that in the first hour of that video going up, it got like 4 views. I'm not even kidding. Like it got nothing. And then 2 months later, I got a video with 1 million views. And like since then, it's just been, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying here, guys. Just thank you for watching. You know, I really like doing this. I want to keep doing this in the future. Yeah, I've got something pretty cool coming up in the future, a bit of a bigger project, but there's a lot of moving parts, so I'm not too sure when it's going to go up. I'm hoping sometime in August, but we'll see. And until then, I've got like some more standard kind of videos, but yeah, see you later.